And welcome back to the Outfit channel. If you're new here, my name is Ange, Chris behind me, our mug that we've built ourselves last year, and we're basically right now stopping our trip for a little bit. Not really stopping, but doing some well-deserved mug that we've been thinking about for a long time and some exciting projects. So we have now arrived in Adelaide in South Australia. We have left the Eyre Peninsula a few days ago where we took actually a little break of filming, and we've been invited by another Unimog owner who has kindly invited us here. Darren, if you're watching, thank you so much. He's got a beautiful property, a beautiful Unimog, and basically offered us a place to park the mug and do whatever job we wanted. So we've got quite a few things to tick off the list this week, and we'll take you along and show you the transformation that is about to happen.
A very exciting day today. We are replacing all 4 of the shocks on Bowser. So we've got some brand new shocks that we got from good bloke Ben at Mog Central, and they arrived, so we're going to pull these shocks out. I'm going to have a crack at pulling these shocks out, putting the new ones in. There's a few symptoms we're getting when we drive that makes me think that maybe these shocks are pretty worn out. I don't know how old they are. Hopefully we'll put the new ones in and we'll notice a big difference. We'll see. There we go.
Wow!
Ta-da! An old truck shock. Alright, Ange, I'm going to bring out the new shock.
Ooh, exciting.
This thing's so much heavier, which is a good sign. So this is a shock that was designed by Ben at Mog Central and another bloke, and Ironman 4x4 are the ones who actually produced it. Gonna try and get this in. Okay. There we go. Okay. This will be easy with the tyre out of the way, but I'm trying to avoid it. I'm basically worried about the shock falling, so could you jump up here? Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to hold the shock.
Yeah.
Can you please try and push the bolt in?
Sure. Alright, so can't really see, but my mission was to put that bolt all the way through. And we did it. Does that mean that shock is completed?
No.
Oh, no.
So it's going to have a nut on one end, so I'm going to put some Loctite on the bolt thread. Just nipped it up, just finger tight, and then we're going to push the shock up, put the other bolt in, and then it'll be pretty much done once I lock it all down.
Very much feels like we're back doing the build. Strange feeling.
It's great. Okay, so it's finger tight now, so it's not going anywhere.
Nice.
So now I catch the shock as it comes down.
Almost there. Yay.
Awesome. Okay. Nice. And the good thing about that was I didn't have to pull the wheel off. So I didn't even have to jack the truck up, so that worked really nicely. I might have to in the other places, but at least I didn't on that one.
Nice. So off to shock number 2.
Shock number 2, yep, bottom bolt's out. Top one's a bit hard to get to, but not too bad.
So slightly different than the right side.
Very different. Yeah, very different.
Hopefully still straightforward.
Yep. Oh.
So this is the difference between the two shocks. Old shock new one. So we've installed 2. Second one is in.
Getting there.
Off to number 3. All right, here you go.
Thank you.
Need a bit of shifty bastard in there. What's happening? Is it just a bit?
It's, yeah, completely seized up. So that one may not come off today. See how we go.
So you had done proactively that in the 2.
On the other side, and for
Yeah.
some reason didn't do the rear. That was pretty clever.
Live and learn.
All 4 shocks are in. Only took a few hours. It was actually a pretty straightforward job, which was nice for a change on the Mog. So yeah, just nipped everything up. We haven't taken it for a test drive yet. I'm hoping we'll notice a bit of a smoother ride. And it did definitely look like the 2 front shocks that I took off there, they were making some weird noises under compression, so looked like maybe they were on their way out. So yeah, hopefully we notice a bit of a difference with them, but overall happy with the look and quality of these ones here. So it should serve us well into the future.
So if you've watched our episode on the Holland track, you would remember that little piece of aluminium actually,
hiding.
yeah. So that's been really bothering us, but with the right hammer and the right force,
It's pretty good now.
so we're using the Mighty Stick and Seal. This product, if you're not familiar with it, it's just amazing. That's everything we've used for all this extrusion, all the aluminium. It's a really good MS polymer adhesive. So we put a lot of it and we're gonna let it stick overnight before the next exciting job.
So one thing we did yesterday in a car parking lot was I chucked this on the front. So this is the 18 bar main tank. So all of the brakes run off this tank here. So this has to get up to 7.5 bar for me to even disengage my handbrake. So this one has the most pressure, and it is a really good place, I thought anyway, to basically take a Nitto fitting. So this is how we'll pump up our tires from that fitting there, but then we've also got a manual valve as well, so that this can never fail, because if that ever started leaking then we could lose our brakes while driving, which would be really bad obviously. So nipped that all in yesterday, so that's all solid there. Very happy about that. Before we were taking our air from this rear Glad hand, which runs off basically the trailer air braking system, but this had started to leak air and I was concerned that I wasn't getting maximum pressure all the way back here. So basically that means all of the air lines, so this one as well, this one here, all of the air lines this side of the truck now, this end of the truck, are actually superfluous. So I need to decide whether I remove them altogether or just leave them kind of dormant for now. But yeah, I'm really happy we got that. The other reason I wanted to do it on this tank is that I can now grab the King's compressor, that's where we got it at the moment, plug it into this tank, and the idea is that if my air compressor ever failed, I can get 7.5 bar with my dual compressor, and that would enable me to at least disengage brakes and be able to drive somewhere to get help. So that was kind of like a foolproof safety plan in my opinion. Might have been able to tell the front looks a little bit different here. Now what was going on is, coming out of our winch rope, we had a big red hook, which was from the Runva winch, came with that winch, and I hooked underneath. But the issue was that it exposed quite a lot of the winch cable. So we've gone with a really nice Sabre alloy winch shackle on the front and the rear. So that's enabled me to tuck the rope right in, and much cleaner look in my opinion. I didn't really like that big red hook. It's also quite a bit lighter, so we shed some weight there. And then for now, we've put some rubber over the rope just to keep the sun away from it, but it's enabled us to kind of showcase the winch, whereas before we had that kind of temporary cover over there, but the sun was annihilating it. So for now, this is doing a better job in my opinion. We also went to Bunnings the other day and bought a bunch of new blocks of wood. So it's just treated pine. Now that's been working really well as our leveling ramps. They're nice and light, so we'll either just chuck them in the front or chuck them in the rear and drive the truck up onto it. So we've now got 2 on this side, 2 on the other, and another 2 in the garage. It also doubles up as well as a jack stand for me too. So, and we can also sometimes put it underneath our little staircase to level that out as well. So that was obviously a very simple upgrade, but basically we had 2 blocks of wood before and 1 split in half when I drove over it one day. So yeah, got that all sorted. Another thing I've done, you may have noticed very occasionally off-road we'll get some water sort of spilling out of the truck. Now usually that's just our grey water, which is fine. When you go on an angle we'll get a little bit more water coming out of our grey water tank because we usually keep that open. But occasionally if we're on a lean for a long period of time, what was happening was water was actually draining out of our main freshwater drinking water tanks and coming out of the breather system on either side. So that happened quite a bit on one track where we had to be off camber for a decent amount of time and we actually started to lose our water, which is annoying because then we don't actually know how much water we've got because our Topaji flow meter would then be off. So what I've done today is I've just put a ball valve in there, really simple one on both sides, so that when we do go off-roading, if there's anything intense, we can actually just block those off and not lose really any water at all. So yeah, another little upgrade. Since we went on the road, we had a little bit of an issue with this dinky exhaust setup that I did before we left. So I basically cut out the muffler, but then I didn't really have a solid way of attaching this exhaust pipe up under here to stop it rattling. So even occasionally it would rattle loose completely. So what I'd done is just a bit of a bush mechanic fix. I'd grabbed some wire from Bunnings. I had it all tied up with wire, but it was still vibrating quite a lot. So Darren very kindly jumped under here today and made some really nice brackets. So he's done this one here, it connects under here. He's done a really nice one there, and he's secured it further in closer to the turbo, so now it doesn't shake or move at all. So thank you very much, Darren. That is something we don't have to worry about flying off on the highway. It's good. Alright, so another job that we've done this week is pull both these front wheels off. Now Darren has very generously done a large part of the work and sort of showed me what to do in terms of the brakes. So since we bought the Unimog, we've had some slight squeaking and squealing, especially when turning around the corners in low speed. I often will jump out of the cab after a decent drive with an infrared temperature gun and just check both portals. Because one big danger, especially with these having portals in particular, portal axles, is that if a brake caliper starts to grab onto the disc, it can really heat the portal up and actually cook it if it really grabbed. So, and that would be a monumentally expensive and big deal. So it's something that always to keep an eye on. Now, Darren heard the squeak as soon as we arrived on his property, which is cool, and proceeded to pull apart both wheels. So we've taken the brake pads out of each caliper. We've got about maybe half to a quarter left in the front. Now they're wearing nice and evenly, so that's been good. Now a cool thing about the Unimog is, well, I guess it's cool and kind of annoying at the same time, but it's a good safety feature, I guess, is you've got 2 giant brake calipers per wheel in the front, not in the rear, just in the front. It's a lot of weight here, but the truck stops on a dime, which is really nice. Now, Darren pulled out those calipers. This one here, so there was a brake caliper here, the pistons were completely seizing up. So one brake caliper must have been dragging ever so slightly, so not enough to heat the portal up, but enough for it to really not be working properly. So we couldn't get the pistons apart, so we've taken it into a brake shop and hopefully they will be able to reseal it completely and get the piston moving again. It was just one piston in particular out of 4, and hopefully we'll get that back and the Mog will be ready to go out of the shed. So that's been good. Now another job I'm doing, again Darren's idea as well, I think he did it on his Unimog, is, if you zoom in on here, Ange, got the double uni joints here. Now normally it's just these bolts, and inside it's basically like a lifetime uni joint that's already pre-greased. So we've decided to put grease nipples in each bung basically, so that I can grease it on the road, and it requires a lot, so 8 each wheel in the front. So I'm just going about and doing that now. So far, pulling the bolts out, there's lots of oil in there already, which is great. So that's been good sign. You can see the new shock absorber. Yeah, other than that, there's a few big mechanical jobs I'll need to tackle at some point. We do have that leaking portal axle. I'll need to do that at a proper workshop one day. And we do have a little bit of an oil leak coming from, I think, the output seal on the transmission. Probably not a huge major, but something I might get a chance to look at today, I'm hoping. Yeah, we'll see how we go. Opened up the bellows. Gross. So under here is a uni joint and a giant thrust ball that protects the uni joint. And I know there's a leak, so trying to see how bad it is really. This will be a major job. Well, I wish I could say more, but I just wanted to check how bad it was. And yeah, it looks pretty bad. Alright, so I'm just draining the 2 oil filter canisters. So they've got a drain plug in the bottom of each of them, so I can actually drain all the oil out of the filter before unscrewing it. Makes it a little bit less clean, so it's about time I replace these. I want to be doing it maybe between every 5 and 10,000 kilometers, and I think we're around about the 6,000 or 7,000 kilometers since we started our trip. So yeah, time for me to replace these filters. We got them from Mog Central, and there's a couple of them on this engine. So drained all the oil, and now we've got our oil filter. Alright, so new filter from Mog Central, straight from Germany. So I've got to replace the little O-ring that sits here on the filter housing. This guy here. I'm going to replace that with a new one. Nicely seated, and then just get a tiny bit of oil on my finger, smear that around the O-ring so it doesn't seat dry. Probably a bit unnecessary, but better to be safe than sorry. Alright, new filter. I'm going to drive into the cool, it's seated now. Alright. Done. One down. So I've done the 2 oil filters, so now I'm also going to change the 2 fuel filters on the Mog as well. And it's easier doing it that way because then I can just change them all at once rather than trying to remember when to change each one. So just 13mm socket. I've already done one of them already. This one's a bit tricky to get to. There we go. And hopefully I'm not going to have to bleed the fuel line too much, but we'll see. It's pretty messy this because these are filled with diesel. You can't actually drain them like you could with the oil. So the old one is here. There Okay. What is that nasty looking thing right there? It's a thread out of something. That is definitely not meant to be in there. Interesting. Let's just drain some of that diesel out. New one goes in. There we go. Okay, we've got a new little copper washer for the bolt that came with the filter. And I've got the little O-ring kind of gasket thing. Alright, so bolt's in place. I've got the little gasket sitting on the fuel filter. That'll go up. I can see that. Got it. Diesel everywhere, which is pretty gross. Now there is a Bosch priming hand pump. You may not be able to see, it's very difficult to see up in there. So I'm just going to prime that. So I've just got to push that down a bunch of times until it gets really hard. Basically it becomes harder and harder to push. All done. Messy but done. Alright, so now for the oil. So I need to replace the oil lost when I changed the filters over. So, dipstick is here. Yeah, so I ran the truck before to get some air in the lines while I was bleeding the brakes. Now, that would have hopefully filled those filters back full of oil, so this should be showing the correct reading, which is showing about 3/4 full. Now I'm not replacing all the oil at the moment, I'm actually just only doing the filters because this engine was designed from factory to use quite a lot of oil, which was a huge surprise to me when I found out that this was using oil. It really scared me, but I've actually since found out from other owners that this can sometimes, brand new out of the factory, the OM352, can actually sometimes use up to 1 litre of oil per working day, and that's completely normal, nothing wrong with the engine. So we haven't been losing anything like that, but I have noticed that I do have to top up the oil every once in a while. So Nulon oil to the rescue, 15W40, going with semi-synthetic. It's a really nice engine oil. It's better than this truck would actually need. Now we carry around a funnel wherever we go. So just take off the oil cap. I basically just guess how much oil we need. So funnel in. And that is a brand new bottle, so I'm gonna have to jump up here, Ange, and try and tip it in without spilling it everywhere. Great. So that's the engine oil done. So yeah, what I was saying is I'm not going to replace all the oil because I am putting new oil in it. Not to mention this oil is so good that it doesn't need to be changed every 5,000 or 10,000 Ks. I'd say every 20,000 is absolutely fine for this. So yeah, probably another 10,000 from now I'll do a full flush and replace the oil filters again. So what I'm sort of thinking is every 10,000 Ks is oil filters, every 20,000 Ks is full oil flush. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to do for this side of things. I can put the bonnet back on and get it looking back like normal Bowser again. Now on the saga of the brake caliper on this side, so the brake place looked at it. Now it took them 4 hours to get the unstuck piston to release. So what they ended up doing was basically overhauling the entire caliper, which we really didn't want to happen because that was quite a big expense that we didn't expect. So that was like $530 for them to overhaul it. And Darren supplied us with the seal kit, which I'll replace for him off Mog Central. So it ended up being like a $700 job, but so glad that Darren pulled the wheel apart because I would have not known what to do. Now I've got a rough idea at least of how to check them and what to do if they do get stuck. So basically we put the brand new caliper on, which is now beautifully painted black. So it's like our racing brake caliper on the front. Put that back on, and then Ange and I bled the brakes basically, which we didn't film because it was so messy and just not really enjoyable and quite dark in here. But basically just bled both brake calipers on this wheel, both brake calipers on the other side. The fluid coming out was nice and clear, so the brake fluid at least is quite new. Topped up with DOT4 brake fluid in the reservoir, and now we're all good. Fingers crossed, we never get the squeaking that you might have heard in videos. We would often have to play around in editing software, basically finding what the pitch of that squeak was and then reducing it so that you didn't hear it so badly. But basically off-road, going slow, turning the wheel, it really squealed. Now hopefully that fixed it. So brand new, basically rehauled brake caliper. Alright, so good to get a bunch of those jobs done and ticked off the list. I showed kind of the bellows and all that oil leaking out. I didn't show that too much further because a lot of that's kind of beyond my pay grade, I guess you could say. So ton of oil in there. It's really old oil, so it looks like that has been leaking for a really long time. And none of that looks new, so I'm always checking the transmission oil levels, and that always seems to be fine. So it's nothing that needs to be tackled immediately, but it is something that will need to be done at some point in the future, but it's going to really require a proper workshop because it is a really big job. But so far it doesn't really look like anything to really stress about, so to be confirmed on that one. And really awesome to get the shocks in place and a bunch of those other little jobs done, because we have a big expedition planned for the near future, which will be crossing the Simpson Desert, kind of near the Red Center. So we really wanted the Mog as sufficient and safe as possible for us to cross that on our own.
Yeah, maintenance before a big trip like that, really important. But before that, we've got another exciting project next week. We talked about it last week. We are saying goodbye officially to our white camper, so stay tuned.
Wait.
It's coming.
So next week's going to be a big episode, guys, so I'm sure you'll like it. And hopefully you like this one as well. It was a little bit different from our normal content, but cool just to show kind of what goes on behind the scenes for an expedition truck.
And the reality of living on the road.
Exactly.
Yeah, so thank you so much for watching if you made it this far, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys. Click that sub button if you're enjoying the content. See you next time.